Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our live broadcast from the ROC. This is 2024 elections. My vote, my choice. I'm still in conversation with Angelo Fick. Of course, we were going to touch on the last 10 years of our democracy, and of course, just looking back to some of the major events that really changed how our democracy is. Angelo, let's touch on the arms deal, and when that happened, that was like the first sign of potential government corruption. And of course, the investigations happen. And we saw people being, of course, brought to the courts. Was that the moment where the public said, maybe, just maybe, a sense of a lack of trust could occur?
Well, I think it was one of the first major disillusions of the post-apartheid period. For many people who had assumed the kind of state, the kind of administration that the African National Congress in government would construct wouldn't have this level of dysfunction and malfunction. But let us not forget that only one person actually ended up in prison for that process, and that was because of his misrepresentation to Parliament. And he remains a stalwart figure of the governing party despite that. The arms deal issue has not gone to bed yet. We have a former president and a French arms company still in the court system around this issue. And so this is an albatross around the neck of the post-apartheid republic, because it is something that we haven't been able to resolve. And added to that have been the crises of the post-2004 period, the last 20 years of the 30 years of democracy.
And then into, of course, Polokwane in 2007, we saw the xenophobic attacks of 2008. It just really culminated in so many things that were happening. And it comes now to 2014 and looking where we are now in 2024. In the analysis of Angelo Fick, how has our democracy either improved or slightly taken a bit of a dent in the past decade?
So I think the African National Congress does need to take some responsibility that a man who is now actively working against them and their interests was somebody that they backed not once, not twice, but on 3 different occasions to be the head of the party on 2 occasions and the head of the state on 2 occasions. This is a man that they defended when Chapter 9 organizations investigated him. And so as a governing party, it is their own relationship with their internal leadership that is what they're going to be indicted for by many, many voters. And loyal supporters of the ANC will remain in place, but for many voters, for many citizens, the observation of the post-Polokwane process has been how the ANC has conducted itself as an organization that says it leads South Africa when it came to having to hold their own territory. And when the next president after Mr. Zuma, Mr. Ramaphosa, faced a similar kind of process, the investigation into Palapala and whether he had a case to answer, a process they had instituted through Parliament, the independent panel, found that he did have a case to answer. They went into Parliament with their caucus and voted that this was not the case. So again, they chose party over process, party over country, and that's something that many people will hold them to account for come this election.
And I want to touch on that, party over the public, party over the citizens. It has been a rhetoric we've seen when it was the secret ballot which was brought by the UDM in Banjo Lamisa. It was the, it was in 2017, if I stand to be corrected, with the Nkandla fire pool scandal, and then we had Palapala, and we saw, well, if I stand to be corrected, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma going against President Cyril Ramaphosa at the time. And my thing is, the public gets irritated. They become frustrated that this party over people had became that rhetoric. Is there going to be a punishment in this polls with regards to that?
My sense is that the ANC's electoral decline over the last 15 years, and they may think that that is a strong term, and there are political parties the world over for whom 57% is a goal. It is not a tragedy. With the faces at the 2014 election, the statements about taking collective responsibility, nobody can forget that. The pressure on Mr. Ramaphosa to keep them above 60% or close to 60% was certainly there. And the splitting off of two movements from the African National Congress, and now three since 2004. First, COPE, when Mr. Mbeki was removed as party president, he resigned as president of the country. Then the formation of the EFF with the flushing of the Youth League in 2012-2013, the formation of their first electoral process in 2014, and then more recently the formation by the most recent president of the party, Jacob Zuma, of the MK party, and the contestation on whether or not he can be a member of parliament. That is an indication of just how far the internal divisions of the ANC that were established when it took power in government have taken the party in the first quarter of the century. And so these are real concerns for a governing party that it does have to take some responsibility for and some deep introspection if it wishes to remain a force of significance into the 2030s and 2040s.
Let's, talk about renewal. It's a word that has been thrown around, mentioned. Thabo Mbeki spoke about it, saying if the ANC is to gain the trust of South Africans, renewal has to happen. Kgalema Motlanthe said the same thing, that, hey, renewal has to happen no matter what. Can the ANC really renew itself? Given that when you look at the State Capture Commission and you look at the names, and yes, I understand its recommendations, the public's going to look at that and say, hey, there's individuals there that we cannot trust to take us forward as the governing party.
So there is certainly that aspect, because one other component of the corruption issue has been the health services PPE corruption during the pandemic, where members of the party were implicated in providing fake PPE, in a variety of other forms of corruption during the planet's most significant health crisis and challenge in 80 to 90 years. So that's a crucial component that I think the ANC has to address. But renewal is something that's very easy to imagine. It's much more difficult to institute in an organization that has branches, has members, has branches that are not in full structural functionality, and they've themselves admitted that they've had disarray in their branches. They're also an organization that, like many other organizations, have become captive to money politics. And so the neoliberalization of South Africa's economy, of the global economy, the choice of profit over people by corporations, the focus on laissez-faire attitudes to workers' rights. These are certainly indications, I think, that the African National Congress will find the renewal process much more difficult. Any party that wishes to have a future in South Africa has to call upon the majority young. For now 2 years now, the majority of people in South Africa have been 27 or younger. So the party needs to let go of the old, literally in this case, people who are in their 70s and 80s, and begin to appeal to the young and have the young come up with new ideas for this party to continue to appeal to the majority of South Africans. What I think has been a boon for the ANC bonus has been the weakness in the opposition. And the opposition parties need to think for themselves why it is that for a governing party in internal disarray, with branch crises, membership crises, shedding two significant and now three significant portions of its membership into other organizations, why they haven't been able to bite into a greater sort of proportion of the electorate. And perhaps on Saturday or Sunday, when the results are finalized, and if they don't get what they've imagined they should be getting, perhaps they should ask themselves why it is that with all of the things we've mentioned, they haven't been able to deliver 30-35% among themselves as individual parties, given how disaffected the electorate has shown itself to be with the African National Congress.
And that's something we're going to be discussing tomorrow, Angela, when we do have the time. But we are going to be going into a press briefing now. The IEC will be, of course, addressing members of the media with regards to how the elections has been going with 2 hours left till the polls close. Let's cross over to the Jumbotron for the IEC.